I pull in, I sleep that night. The next morning I wake up and I hear this like knocking on my window of my van, and it's Carl Anderson. And
Really?
he's invited me to come in, and I walk into his house, and he's got like a complete, buffet, like a breakfast buffet laid out. I mean, he's got fruit and pancakes and all kinds of bacons and bacon egg. I mean, and all kinds of, I mean, yogurt and cereal, whatever you want, basically. And it's got all laid out there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he really kind of went all out for this whole thing. And then he proceeded to spend almost the entire day with me, and going over the sacred things that have happened and some of the historical stuff that he knew about. We went to look at different places, and I was just amazed by his kindness, his friendship, his generosity, and taking that much time with me. This is just down Chillicothe Road, there in Kirtland, and this is the site where you have. You can see. I don't know if you can see my cursor there.
Yes.
Okay, but you can see that the drill marks. So these are where they actually the early brethren actually would drill into this. This is
Wow.
This is one of the this is the primary.
And folks, when we're talking drills, we're not talking electric drills. I know you guys know that. You're not idiots, but they didn't have electricity until maybe 1890. The Melchizedek priesthood. So the MPC means Melchizedek Presiding Council. That was the first presidency of the church or the stake.
Yeah.
Church
Presiding
or
council,
stake.
Presiding council Melchizedek. So
right.
The view is from the Melchizedek side. It's looking at the Aaronic side. That's why you see the A.
Right. And it's interesting how they typified the first presidency to a stake presidency, because a stake presidency is basically almost like a first presidency of the stake. Okay, folks, I am so excited, so thrilled, and I do not mean that lightly. Rod is back. I'm glad that you came back. I am so glad you came back.
Why would I not come back?
I don't know, because, well, I felt bad. The flood video was so amazing. I'm cutting that up and I'm re-releasing it. It was the most amazing thing. If you have not seen the flood video that Rod and we had an interview on that. It's amazing. Go watch it. So who is Rod? Rod Meldrum is a prominent figure within the Latter-day Saint community, known for his advocacy of the Heartland model of the Book of Mormon geography. What do they call you?
I've been calling myself the Book of Mormon evidence guy.
Okay. He is the Book of Mormon evidence guy. Most of you guys know him. Welcome back to the program. And today we are talking about Kirtland. And most of you know already that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has recently purchased the historic Kirtland Temple, along with several other properties and artifacts from the community of Christ for $192.5 million. This landmark agreement, announced on March 5th, 2024, includes not only the Kirtland Temple, but also the Smith home, the Smith family homestead, the Mansion House, the Nauvoo House, the Red Brick Store, all located in Nauvoo, Illinois. Additionally, the transaction encompasses important manuscripts and artifacts such as the Bible used in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, letters from Joseph Smith to his wife, Emma, and original portraits of Joseph and Emma Smith, among other things. And we could go on and on and on. We're going to talk about that. Why go on when we could talk about it with Rod Meldrum? And we're going to first talk about Mr. Kirtland. Who is Mr. Kirtland?
Well, that's not me. Okay.
It's not you.
That is a good friend of mine. His name is Carl Anderson. And I have to tell you, Troy, it was kind of fun. When I was first getting started with this whole thing, I was needing to go back and spend some time, do some more research. I wanted to find out what Joseph Smith knew about geography and I figured what better way to know about Joseph Smith than go back and actually go back and be in the places that he was and learn more about his life and kind of be able to put historical things in kind of in context and in order. And I decided I needed to go and spend some time back in Kirtland. So I took off with I don't know, maybe my wife's credit card. I don't know, something, but I had no money for hotels or anything. I was literally just I called and made arrangements with people along the way so I could stay with them and get to know people as well as have save money on hotel expenses and things. So I
Right.
had my little Honda Odyssey minivan. I had a bed set up in the back of it. I could sleep back there anywhere I needed to, so I could stop and do that. And I was going to be rolling into Kirtland, and I got a hold of the Kirtland Visitor Center and said, "Hey, so is there some place that I can like park my van, without having being harassed by the police in the middle of the night, saying what are you doing here, kind of thing?" And they said, "Well, there's this guy here. It's kind of known
Book
as
of
Mr.
Mormon evidence hippie guy and a
Well, no. This is a guy in Kirtland. He said there's this guy that he's kind of known as Mr. Kirtland. He's like one of the foremost experts in the church on the historical epic, basically, of Kirtland." And so they gave me his phone number, and I called him out of the blue. He didn't know who I was, and I just said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be rolling in probably about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Could I just park my van in your driveway? To have no issues with parking on the street or being a vagrant," basically. And so he said, "Yeah, no problem. Just here," gave me his address and so forth. Well, I pull in, I sleep that night. The next morning I wake up and I hear this like knocking on my window of my van, and it's Carl Anderson. And
really
he's invited me to come in, and I walk into his house, and he's got like a complete buffet, like a breakfast buffet laid out. I mean, he's got fruit and pancakes and all kinds of bacon egg. I mean, and all kinds of yogurt and cereal, whatever you want, basically. And he's got all laid out there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he really kind of went all out for this whole thing. And then he proceeded to spend almost the entire day with me and going over the sacred things that have happened and some of the historical stuff that he knew about. We went to look at different places, and I was just amazed by his kindness, his friendship, his generosity, and taking that much time with me. I'm at the time, I mean, I'm just some guy coming out there to look at stuff in Kirtland. So I just wanted to give it just a quick little shout out. But it turns out, not only is he Mr. Kirtland, but he's also, I mean, this is one of his books here. This is Carl Rex Anderson. But Carl Anderson, and this is actually this is one of my favorite, because this is an actual autographed copy of Joseph Smith's Kirtland. So that's a fantastic book. But probably my favorite one of his is The Savior in Kirtland, right here.
yeah.
And the personal accounts of divine manifestations, The Savior in Kirtland by Carl Anderson. And again, if I got another autographed copy from him about that. But this one really kind of goes into a deep dive into how many times the Savior appeared there in the Kirtland area, between Isaac Morley Farm and the John Johnson Farm and the Whitney store and the School of the Prophets and the Kirtland Temple. I mean, it's kind of the highest concentration of actual visitations by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ than anywhere else in the world, maybe except for Jerusalem. So it was really it's a fantastic area. It's a wonderful place. I really think, Troy, maybe you can whatever you think about this, but when you have places that have God the Father or Jesus Christ that actually come to a physical location, it seems like it kind of imbues some kind of their power is kind of embedded into the landscape, if you will. I don't know if you want to put it that way. I mean, people go out into the sacred grove and they can feel that, places where Christ has been. You go to places in Israel, and you can kind of feel that. And anyway,
Well, I just had Glenn Rawson on recently, and he mentioned a referenced something called the spirit of place.
yeah,
And he said he learned that from, I forgot who he said he learned that from, but basically what you're saying is that there's still a spirit of reverence. And when he said that, I was going to mention, well, we sold a chapel that my grandpa worked on. Just real quick, I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
Our stake, I'm in Central California, and our stake sold the stake center 20 years ago. And the county bought it, and now it's like split up into different offices. It's a county building now. But when you walk into it, you could still. That's where I was baptized in the late 70s. And when you go into it, still there's that spirit of place. There's that filling, that almost like it's still dedicated. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I just had that opportunity to go there and kind of just feel of that space there. And there's just, as I've taken tours, a lot of people know that I do tours, right? So I've had probably about 5,000 people have gone with me on these tours, and Kirtland is obviously one of the primary places that we tend to go. And just all the places around there, like I mentioned about the John Johnson farm and Isaac Morley farm and Fairport Harbor, and and the Kirtland area itself. It's all got some really great church history in it. But one of the things that just kind of take a step back for a second. So over the course of these years, Troy, I've had the opportunity to get to know a lot of people from the community of Christ, and I got to say, I want to just give a little shout out to my friends there. They have done a yeoman's job with the limited resources that they've had, and trying to keep these sites open, to keep them going, keep the maintenance on them going. And it's a forever project. Anybody who's ever owned a home, you know how it is. Trying to keep everything going, and especially when you're open to the public kind of thing. So I just I got to know one of my favorite people is Lachlan Mackay. He's with the Community of Christ. He was their sites director. Excuse me. He's the historical sites director, and got to know him over the course of time because he was involved with all of these historical sites that the Community of Christ owned and had been taken care of. He a few days ago, just right after the announcement of the sale of the temple and these other things, he released a video, and you can kind of see. I mean, he was pretty melancholy about the whole thing. I mean, he understood. He said, I'm kind of like Joseph Smith III. I'm very pragmatic. He said, and he says that we know it's better off that it gets into the hands of the as they call us, the Salt Lake Church, right? And he said, because we just didn't have the capability to do the things that are necessary to keep it up. But it's a difficult thing, and they have put their heart and soul into that, and so I want to just a little shout out to him. And also I had a conversation with him a number of years ago, and he said, Rod, he says, the kind of the way things are going, we kind of know, here at the Community of Christ, that you guys are probably going to end up with the with a lot of these places, a lot of these historical sites. He says, but just know that when the day comes that we actually sell the Nauvoo Temple, or excuse me, the Kirtland Temple, will pretty much mean the end of our holding on to these historical sites, because that's when it's just really dear and special to us. So so the fact that that's now happened is a pretty big deal, and I think it also makes sense that they would have done all of the other ones as well at the same time, because really it was the Kirtland Temple that needs the most immediate help. When I say that, excuse me, when I say that, the construction of the Kirtland Temple was interesting. It's not constructed like most buildings that we have today. It was called rubble stone construction. You know about rubble stone construction there, Troy, a little bit?
Does it involve rubble and stone?
Basically, what it means, if you have an earthquake, it's going to turn into rubble.
Okay.
No, no. Actually, what it is they actually would have these stones that they would get out of there, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. I'll show you some photos of the actual quarry. They're just outside of Kirtland on Chillicothe Road. That actually where they got the stone from. But they basically take stones and they just essentially stacking stones in a mortar mix. And so there's no wood, there's no steel. It's literally just mortar holding stones together. The bottom of the walls are like 4.5 feet wide. And at the top, when it gets up there, it goes to about 2.5 feet wide. So it actually tapers up as it goes up.
So there's no rebar or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no rebar. There's no, well, I mean, that, rebar didn't exist at the time.
Right.
And they've never had the financial capability to go in and do a seismic upgrade, which of course our church is like, expert at that. We've been seismically hardening a lot of our temples and especially the old pioneer era temples.
So I bet we're eager to get in there and do that. Probably.
I hope so. The sooner the better. There was a small earthquake about 8 or 9 years ago, just like a 3.0 or 3.5, and it put cracks all over the exterior structure of the temple. So that was it needs it bad. The other ones, the other ones in Nauvoo are in much better shape, I think, as far as being able to withstand a small earthquake or something. They're not going to fall down.
Now you're saying the guy was Joe Jackson that told you that, right?
It's Lachlan Mackay, basically. Joe Jackson is another friend of mine, but he's actually a member of our faith. He grew up and was born and raised there.
But when Lachlan Mackay, let me just ask you something real quick. When Lachlan Mackay told you that, he said, when you see the Kirtland Temple sold, how did he put it?
Pretty much done. I mean, that'll be the last thing to tell you.
Right. Okay. Which, who knows, right? Let me ask you something though. Do you think that's almost a sign of the times? When I say that, I mean, I'm not saying the Savior's coming tomorrow necessarily, but what I'm saying is maybe a sign of the times as far as preparing for the second coming, receiving all of these things back to, I still believe Jackson County, Missouri is or Independence, Missouri is relevant. In spite of the stakes of Zion being all over the world. But do you see that, Rod, as maybe a little or big sign that if it wasn't owned by some other organization, we would never have known when we were getting close to that time? So buying that back is almost like something's preparing. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I was completely, well, I wouldn't say shocked necessarily, but I was taken aback by the timing of it because, I've been hearing about it for a number of years, but because it's been a number of years and I keep hearing about it, I kind of thought, well, maybe. In fact, I got to say, I made a big mistake probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I was in our big expo. We do this semi-annual expo, right? And we in the expo, and right before that, my a good friend of mine who happens to have a guy in his ward who is high up in the administrative part of the church, right? And he was his ministering brother, and anyway, so he was ministering to this guy who was high up, and he told my buddy, he said, so I just signed a $30 million check to the Community of Christ this last week, and he didn't tell him what it was for, right? He said, well, but it's just $30 million. And I figured, there's got to be, I mean, how many things could the Community of Christ possibly have that would be worth $30 million,
right,
on its own? So I actually kind of went on a limb, and here's my repentance. Okay, so I was up in front of about 1,200 people or 1,300 people there in the expo, and I said that I specifically did say that there was a $30 million check that was just recently signed for the Community of Christ, and so I kind of basically said I think it's for the Kirtland Temple, there was kind of a hush, oh, it kind of falls over the crowd. The church just bought the Kirtland Temple, right? And then I had to eat Major Crow the next day when the
No.
church announced that
Yeah.
it wasn't the Kirtland Temple. The printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon. I guess it
Wow.
was like the most expensive documents ever in history or something like that. Those things, but they're I mean they're invaluable. I mean, how do you put a price on
Right.
those the printer's manuscript? Because the original manuscripts got pretty much destroyed. About only 20% of those got remained that were hidden there in the endowment house there in Nauvoo, and they got water damaged. But so I just wanted to come clean. So that's why I decided that I'm not going to make any kind of announcements before the church. Don't get ahead of the church. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Right. But
So
isn't
I
it
had to wait
neat
for
though
them.
that no one else has had an interest in buying all these things, like some other private person?
Well,
You
who
know what I
else would
mean?
have who else would have the capability and the interest?
Well, and the
You
church,
know?
because I believe divinely, they have been preserved for us to buy. You know, I think the
Well,
Lord has taken it out of the hearts and minds of somebody to want these things.
yeah. Well, this is the first temple of this dispensation. It's not just
Right.
any temple. I mean, it was actually the first temple that Joseph Smith actually saw in vision. I mean, the design of the temple, and if you think about the temple in today's standard, it's not that big of a building, but back then, it was one of the largest edifices, really anywhere. It was probably by
Right.
far the largest edifice anywhere west of Chicago, and some of those areas. I mean, it was a huge monumental structure, which is kind of hard to imagine if you have a bunch of dirt farmers and immigrants coming in. They're just poor as church mice, and they have no ability to really do this. They have to take loans out on the temple just to get the stuff, even though they're getting all of the labor pretty much is all being donated,
Yeah.
and yet they still are not able to really even you know uh, pay for it as they go. They have to actually get a loan, which we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about uh, the well, not just John Johnson, but also Tanner, John Tanner. So, but another couple of people though I just wanted to mention really quickly, and that is Tom Kimball. Tom was a member of our faith. It was interesting because he went there to Kirtland, I guess some kind of family vacation or something or other, just to go out there, and he just absolutely fell in love with the temple and decided that he needed to help preserve her and to keep
Wow.
it going. So he basically volunteered for a couple of years, I guess, and then he became a paid, you know, uh, uh, handyman kind of thing, taking care of, some of the different needs that it had. He then they let him start doing tours, and he gave some really great tours. They're pretty much all the Community of Christ people that were there gave really good tours, but I really appreciated Tom Kimball's his respect for and love of the building.
Now,
And
was
then
he a major contractor or construction guy or
he had some construction experience.
investor?
Was an investor. He basically, I don't know that he really ever had much money. I mean, as far as that's concerned, he just did it just for the sheer love of keeping this temple going,
Wow.
and his love of the Community of Christ, and they loved him also. I mean, the bottom line is that they were helping to support him by having him come and work on the temple and things, and he's the only coffee drinking member of the church. He'd show up for our tours and he'd have a glass, cup of coffee in his hand. It's kind of, well, I am a member of your faith, but
Oh, so he
don't
was a
worry.
member of the Church of Jesus Christ of
Yes,
Latter-day Saints. Okay.
yeah,
That
yeah. So
reminds me of my grandpa
yeah,
that helped build. Remember back in the 70s, we used to all build our own
yeah.
chapels. You
Had to
remember that, right?
raise money and
And
everything
raise
to
money for
do it.
chapels.
Yeah,
My grandpa, he had the Aaronic priesthood all of his life. He never went to church. He smoked. He drank coffee, but he was in the Carpenters Union in California. When
yeah.
we had to build our stake center, he was right there. 1976. He's up
Pound
there.
of nails.
Yep. It had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah. So I mean, everybody, but his heart was in the right place, and that's what I wanted to say. But he unfortunately passed away during the COVID time frame, and he's greatly missed. So Joe Jackson is the other guy the Kirtland history expert. He's been met with my last couple of tours I've taken back there, and it's kind of neat. The Kirtland area. The Community of Christ had already sold the Joseph Smith and Emma home, so the church had the lower Kirtland area, which is basically the store and the ashery and the sawmill and a couple other buildings and some of the homes of the early people that were there. They had already put a visitor center there. But then there was kind of the upper part of Kirtland up on the hill there that had the temple and the cemetery and Joseph and Emma's home that was up there on top. And the Community of Christ sold that to the church just a few years ago, and the church just finished actually last year the remodel on that. They actually took it down to the original house, and then they've took it back to original historical paint and everything. So what it was basically, it's just like it was in Joseph Smith's day there in Kirtland. So that's pretty cool. But one of my favorite things about the visitor center, I'm sure we got that is part of the temple purchase. I'm going to show you something here in just a second. Let me just kind of show you. So when you walk into the Kirtland Visitor Center, they have a big probably about a 70 or 80 seat auditorium kind of thing, and you go in, you sit down, and they play this video, just introducing what the temple and some of the work and things that went on with that and the history behind it. And at the very end, so you're sitting in this room. It's got like a big black screen that then the film then comes down onto the film screen. You got portraits of the different presidents of the Community of Christ, which was previously the RLDS, the RLDS,
the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ. Yeah,
I keep on to say
which later became the Community of Christ, but there were so many branches off of that too.
Man, there's a lot of branches. There's like 60 branches from off of they call them the Restoration group of churches. So anyway, so as you sit in there and you watch this, at the very end, they have this kind of a small choir, maybe a 5 or 6 person choir, and they're singing "The Spirit of God Like a Fire is Burning," right? And just as they start singing that, then all of a sudden the big film screen goes up, and all of a sudden the big black curtains start to open, and you realize that this is what you're looking at suddenly. It's right here.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
So as it opens up
now, during the time of
wall,
I have a question. During the time of Joseph Smith, of course, the trees weren't that big, but was there a lot of brushery and shrubbery and treeseries around the area?
Well, I cut down the shrubbery within hearing, so no. It was probably pretty much just scorched earth. I mean, it had been under construction. You have wagons and horses and so forth.
Right.
I think some of the earliest images of the temple show it was pretty much denuded. There was no big trees there. In fact, I might be able to find. In fact, I do have a couple of the images here. Let me see if I can find an image here for you to take a look at of the original temple here, right here. Let me show that to you real quick here. So this is, excuse me.
It's interesting. Just while you, go ahead.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Okay, so there was some trees.
Yeah, that was one of the very earliest images. So you can kind of still see the hill. This is the main road right there today. And actually the church had so what year is this? Do you think this is like 1870, 1860?
I
don't remember what the time frame of this, but yeah, it was when daguerreotypes had just come out and were starting.
Oh, okay. So we're talking, daguerreotypes were being used in the 1830s and 40s even.
Yeah, so this is probably in the 40s or 50s. I'm guessing. Again, I don't know that, so don't quote me on that. But
Right.
basically, but you can kind of see up here. I mean, there's still there's some big trees, but they're kind of a ways off. These are kind of on the hill, and I guess they're probably a block or so from the temple, because the temple is sitting back quite a ways. It's really a pretty monumental building
Right.
for its time. Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. This is a painting of the temple, showing kind of the rubble stone construction. Again, there's no trees in the painting part of it, but that's
Well, and I didn't know, I've never been there. I would like to go sometime, but I didn't know it was sitting up on a hill, as you showed. It's on a hill kind of.
yeah, it is actually.
But the pictures always depict it being on flat ground, but it's kind of up close anyway when they're showing paintings and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm going to share with you just a couple of paintings that are not paintings, photos of some of the. So like right here, let me share my screen again right there with you. So there we go. So this is just down Chillicothe Road, there in Kirtland, and this is the site where you have you can see. I don't know if you can see my cursor there.
Yes.
Okay, but you can see that the drill marks. So these are where they actually the early brethren actually would drill into this. This is
Wow.
this is one of the this is the primary.
And folks,
core.
when we're talking drills, we're not talking electric drills. I know you guys know that. You're not idiots, but they didn't have electricity until maybe 1890.
Yeah.
And we're talking these kind of drills.
Yeah,
right.
Basically like a chisel, like a long chisel with a chisel head on it.
Uh-huh.
And one guy would sit there and hold it at the bottom, and another guy would whack it with a sledgehammer up on top, and then the guy on the bottom would rotate the drill about 30 or 40 degrees.
But they're doing this fast. They're doing this fast.
Yeah,
right.
Whack it, keep rotating it, and whacking it. And that's how they would drill these holes, which it was a laborious, horrendously difficult process.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another. This is kind of a wider view of one of the banks. You can kind of see all the drill lines going down along here, and then they would break them out. So after they get the drills in, then they would get some big steel bars, and they would lean on them and basically and break the pieces out into this.
So now
area.
what is okay? So this is the foundation of what?
It's not a foundation. This is the quarry.
Oh, the quarry. Sorry.
Stone was being removed from. Yeah.
Okay. I was taking some notes while you were saying something. So, wow. That is amazing.
Now that's a close-up view. This is one that didn't break out. See what they would do if you go back to let me get to this next one here.
Isn't it interesting that is that limestone?
I think it is limestone. I'm not again, don't quote me on that. I don't know what type of stone, but I think it is limestone. It's not a super hard, it's not like a granite kind of stone. It's actually, but it's strong. I mean, you have to pound through it, but it is not a super hard stone. But you can see that here they drilled down to this point, and then the rest of it they would break out. Okay, they drill down to weaken it enough so then this is on all four sides. So this would have been a rock that they would have actually picked this rock up and then stuck it on the back of a wagon, hauled it over to the temple site, and then used it with mortar to stack up the rocks and make the walls of the temple.
And yeah, it was limestone. I just looked it up. Yeah, that's neat that there happened to be limestone.
Yeah,
that is neat. That is so beautiful.
Yeah. So there's some limestone there. There's the Kirtland Temple there, and there's the painting again. I see, and I've got other images. Let's go back out of that for a minute. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so now I need to get to a little bit about the temple, the spires. So let me show you a couple of other images here that shows the spire of the temple, because there's some really interesting symbolism that goes along here. And again, if we believe that Joseph Smith that he was telling the truth when he said that he saw these things in vision. So this is a little bit closer up view of that right there. But I want you to take
Well, I hope he was telling the truth, because I've been doing this for a long time.
That's right. But he saw this temple in vision. And it was clear enough that he actually, so there's two primary rooms, two big spaces inside the building. There's the lower portion, which I'll get to. You can't really see it very well here. I'll show you some of the pictures of that. And there's an upper portion. Both of the upper and lower portions have an interesting thing. I don't know how often this ever been done historically, but it's a very unique aspect of this building, that it has pulpits on both sides, in the front and the back.
Pulpits on both. Okay, rephrase that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Say that again.
There's a group of pulpits when you walk in. So this is the front of the building here on the.
Oh,
on the
we don't have it up. That's why I didn't know what you were talking about. You didn't put it up. Yeah, you were. I was lost. I didn't know what you were talking.
Oh, sorry.
About.
Okay,
It's okay.
There we go. All right, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Scratch that. Reverse it.
That. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the right hand side is the front entry of the building. Okay, and then you have two floors. Let me see if I've got a better shot of that. Okay, well, you can kind of see it there. Oh, let's see now. Okay, sorry, these are not in particular order.
No, it's okay. It's okay. They're all beautiful.
So there's two sets of pulpits. When I say pulpits, meaning it's kind of like when you walk into a chapel today, you're going to have everything, the rostrum, basically the choir seats, they're all on one side of the building, right? This one has them on the front and the back. The back was for the Aaronic priesthood to sit at their pulpits, and the front has for the Melchizedek priesthood holders in the front. And so they had a unique way of doing it. How do you face both directions? I mean, which way do you set the pews, right?
Right.
Well, they had this really kind of a cool pew system. They actually built kind of boxes, if you will, that the pews would sit in, but the pew was really just a bench. And the bench would be sitting in there. So if you were going to face the Melchizedek priesthood side, you would sit in a particular direction. They'd slide the bench back against the back wall there. They could sit down and lean against that box there and have some room for their feet in the front. But then when they switched over to want to look at the back of the space, okay, then they would actually stand up, step over the bench, move the bench backwards, and then literally sit the other direction, so they could actually face both directions on the pews.
Interesting.
A lot of people don't know that, but that's kind of an interesting little piece of history. Now, another thing is that they had these big canvas kind of draperies that would come down with pulleys, and it could actually separate those great big rooms into about into like a few different smaller rooms. So usually I think it was like at least 4, but I think it could actually be separated into 6.
So can we see the inside? Do you have any pictures of the inside?
I do have pictures of the inside, but that's not something that you're able to take pictures of. They have
really?
Yeah, that was not allowed. I do have some from
okay, so that was a Community of Christ policy. That was a Community of Christ policy?
Yeah, now, no pictures on the inside when you're on tours. Yeah.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, do we have any pictures of, like, on images of that? Maybe.
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure if I pulled.
Let me look. Let me just look real quick, Rod, because I'm really fascinated by what you just said. Hold on a second.
I'll stop the share so you can go to your screen there.
Yeah, Kirtland Temple pews.
Let's see. It'd be pulpits.
Pulpits. I'm sorry, Kirtland Temple. Well,
Kirtland Temple pulpits. Yeah,
and were you going to explain? I don't know if you can. Why there were 333 and what the symbols meant?
I can do that. But you'd have to have the picture, and then it's
right.
Not. And even with the Community of Christ, they're not 100% sure exactly what each one of those meant. But there's an Aaronic priesthood side and Melchizedek priesthood side. You have high priests, and you have deacons, and then you have priests and so forth. So I don't know if you can find the
Yeah.
interior
So
shot.
I'm kind of getting the reverse pulpit. So you had pulpits on each end. Here we go.
If you can just show one, the other
Well,
one looks very similar. You may not
yeah.
be able to find them online because
Well,
of
we
that.
have this. I'll show this right here because
Okay.
I've kind of showed this before. Let me bring this up real quick here. Uh, um, um, is that so? Are these the pulpits down here from the
Yeah.
other
So
end,
this
right?
one
So we're
is,
facing, yeah,
yeah. Okay. I'm looking at this and it looks to me like you're facing backwards. I think this is the back uh windows. And actually, I think that this may be the upstairs one. They look virtually the same. Now, while you've got that
right.
image up though, you notice the boxes in the corners. Okay. That was for the choir. It was really the first ever, Dolby surround system choir deal that was set up.
Right,
Okay.
right.
They had one of those choir boxes in all four corners of the room. So the choir would literally be separated and be singing at you from behind and in front on all four corners of the room. Pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah,
And then
here's a more, wait, hold on just a second here.
got another image of that.
Well,
I'm trying to see that because there's light coming through that one. It's probably that may be the front of the meaning that's the back of the thing there. Yeah, because
can you see
the
this
front
one?
one has
There,
actually
that's
got a
better.
front
That's a
foyer,
clearer
but it
picture.
wouldn't get direct light through it. So
That is so beautiful. Now,
isn't that
do you
gorgeous?
was they have kept this up? Well, no. There was a time where it was a barn, right?
Was it what? Was it what?
There was a time where this became a barn almost. There were like animals in it and it,
No, I don't think so. It was always a city, kind of a
or am
civic
I thinking of the
building.
Nauvoo temple? Which one kind of became desolate for a little while and
Well, the
then
Nauvoo temple was basically knocked down by a tornado.
that's right. I'm sorry, not the
And this
Nauvoo.
one was never knocked down, but I don't think it was ever used as a barn, but it was kind of a civic building. They had many different faiths
Okay.
have had things there. They've had like I understand like high school graduations there occasionally. Um, but the woodwork and the pews are all original. I mean, those have never been taken out. Um, there's been pieces that have been fixed, but as far as I understand, the floor, when you walk on the floor, I mean, it squeaks like the original,
Wow.
you know.
That is so amazing. That is
And all
so
the pulpits are all original. Even the one that the couple of handrails have been actually updated, but there's a couple of handrails that were actually there. So really, honestly, that Joseph Smith literally, at some point in time would have grabbed that exact handrail that you have, and they ask you not to grab that handrail because it is a historical thing, and it's old. Things
yeah,
get old and they get weaker typically.
that
But
is so
anyway,
neat.
so let me show you a couple of other quick things. I wanted to go back to, let's see if I should have had some. I should have grabbed a couple of pictures I have of the inside. I have some really beautiful pictures from Bell Brinkerhoff, who got the permission to go and actually shoot professional photos of it. But let me just share this screen with you again real quick here.
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing that this temple was seen in vision by Joseph Smith, he also, the dedicatory prayer was interesting because he said that he received that dedicatory prayer uh, by revelation as well. But if you take a look at the spire here, and I want to kind of zoom up. Can you see that zooming up there?
Yes.
Take a quick look at that spire. So geometrically speaking, in the Hebrew culture, a square or a rectangle is a representation of the earth. They talk about the four corners of the earth. Okay. A sphere, on the other hand, or a ball, is basically a representation of eternity, eternal life, or forever, those kinds of concepts, right? So you have the ball, and then you also have the square. But in between the two, so you have the ball, see the ball up here at the top, Now the
Well, it
original,
almost reminds me of a weather vane.
that one, yeah,
Doesn't it a little
that
bit?
one
Yeah.
actually kind of is. The original one was actually didn't look like this. It was actually, it looked like it was actually a Moroni, um, that was completely sideways, kind of almost like Superman style.
Oh, like
Okay,
blowing a trumpet
and blowing the trumpet
and
out in
like
front of
flying
him.
through the air. Okay.
Yeah, flying through the air with the trumpet sticking out, and that was kind of the top of it there. But then also you have the cupola or the kind of the half dome shape right there on the top. Okay. Then you have the square base down here, but in between that is an octagon shape. And that's an interesting thing because an octagon is geometrically, it is the transitional form between between a square and a circle. Okay. And in fact, if you ever been to the Salt Lake Temple before they did the remodeling, I don't know what's going to have on it now, but basically there's two glass doors. And you take these glass doors, when you walk up to them, there's an emblem that was emblazoned on those glass doors. It was kind of about a 4 inch by 4 inch piece of glass square. There was a second glass square that was set on top of that, but it was rotated about 45 degrees. So it created like an 8-pointed star, had a little beehive on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the emblem as on the two doors as they would slide open to let you into the temple.
Right.
If anybody's been to the San Diego temple and you walk up to the front doors, that same motif is on the San Diego temple like 10,000 times on the outside. In fact, if you look straight down on the San Diego temple, like from a drone or a satellite, you're going to see that the temple itself actually forms this particular motif. People, when the architect that did the original design of the San Diego temple, didn't know what that design was. So they asked, what is that? And they went to Hugh Nibley, and Hugh Nibley said, well, that's the seal of Melchizedek. So what, the seal of Melchizedek is, yeah, there's these ancient mosaics that have been done, that have been found, where it has Melchizedek over the top, and he's standing in front of an altar, and on the altar is this particular motif with this octagon with a circle, or either around it or inside of it, kind of thing. And this eight-pointed star thing. So if you have an 8-pointed star, if you just connect all the tips of all the stars, that makes the
Right.
octagon, right? Anyway, so
Hugh Nibley was amazing, wasn't he? He was always Hugh Nibley was amazing.
Yeah.
He was always he was decoding everything.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
So if a square is a representation of the earth, and a circle or a sphere is a representation of God, then the seal of Melchizedek, which is the octagonal structure, was actually originally the priesthood was called what? The priesthood after the holy order of the Son of God,
right?
Which is Jesus Christ.
Which was the holy that was the priesthood of God.
Yeah. Well, the priesthood of basically Jesus Christ, right? So,
right. Well, they used the word Melchizedek because to not use the repetition of the Lord's name.
God, right. Yeah, the Lord's name, exactly. But it was Christ's priesthood, and what this basically represents is that the seal of Melchizedek is the intermediary between heaven and earth. Jesus Christ is our intermediary. Without him, we can't go from earth to the celestial kingdom, as an example. It's only through Christ can we get there. And so that's the seal of Melchizedek is really interesting, because symbolically the temple, basically the first temple of this dispensation, literally is showing here that the base, which is a square, you can't get to the top of the spire unless you go through the octagon structure.
Interesting.
Okay? So symbolically, again, that this is what the temple is all about. The temple has four corners. Okay, that's again representation of the earth. But when we go to the temple, we're trying to transcend earth, right? We're trying to learn what it's going to take to aspire up through the octagon of Jesus Christ to basically be in the celestial kingdom. So I think it's fascinating, the symbolism a lot of people don't know about with the Kirtland Temple that's right there.
That is neat. That is amazing. I wanted to also, were you, can I
Another shot of that. I'll give you my screen back here.
Just for a second.
The temples. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so I want to go back to this just for a second, because I don't know if were you going to talk about this. So you talked about the pulpits, one facing east and one facing west, the Melchizedek priesthood. So the MPC means Melchizedek Presiding Council. That was the first presidency of the church or the stake.
Yeah.
Church
Presiding
or
council,
stake.
Presiding council Melchizedek.
Right.
The view is from the Melchizedek side, and it's looking at the Aaronic side. That's why you see the A.
Right. And it's interesting how they typified the first presidency to a stake presidency, because a stake presidency is basically almost like a first presidency of the stake. The stakes of Zion are just as important as the first presidency. Because your stake president receives revelation for his stake. And then PMH is presiding Melchizedek high priesthood, or the quorum of the 12 apostles, or stake high council. MHP is Melchizedek high priesthood. And then PEM is presiding elders, presidency, elders, Melchizedek representing elders quorum. And then the pulpits facing west, the Aaronic priesthood, is BPA, bishop presiding over the Aaronic priesthood, which today a bishop still presides over the Aaronic priesthood.
Yep.
PAP, presiding presidency, Aaronic priest. PTA, presiding presidency, teachers, Aaronic. And then PDA, presiding presidency, deacons, Aaronic. Anyway, I just wanted to, that's so neat. That is so neat.
Yeah, it's interesting how they the different nomenclatures that they use for these things.
Yeah.
So.